So there were maybe reports of two guys potentially stalking Kaylee. Where was Murphy during the attacks? And lots of speculation and theories going around. Let's get into some updates on the Idaho Four. In case you're not aware of the Idaho murders, there were 4 University of Idaho students who were murdered in Moscow, Idaho on November 13th, around 3 to 4 a.m., sometime in that space. And the 4 were stabbed in a residence, and 3 of them were roommates. And there were 2 surviving roommates. And the 4th person who was killed was the boyfriend of one of the roommates. And it was a terrible crime, just so awful. It's been more than 3 weeks, and so far there are no suspects, and the murder weapon has not been found, according to law enforcement yet. So let's get into some updates and see where we're at today. Steve Gonzalez has come out on the news a lot over the last few days, putting out a lot of information that we hadn't heard before. And so yesterday, the city of Moscow Police Department put out an update, and I wanted to share that. So it says here, there's been statements and speculation about this case, victim injuries, cause of death, evidence collection and processing, and investigative techniques. With the active criminal investigation, law enforcement has not released additional facts to the family or the public. We recognize the frustration this causes and that speculation proliferates in the absence of facts. However, we firmly believe speculation and unvetted information is a disservice to the victims, their families, and our community. The Moscow Police Department is committed to providing information whenever possible, but not at the expense of compromising the investigation and prosecution. And this is important because it can be, can be thought of that some of the information that's been put out by Steve Gonzalez potentially could hinder the investigation. So I don't know. We'll see. All right. So next is detectives continue investigating what occurred from approximately 9 p.m. on November 12th to 1:45 a.m. on November 13th, when Ethan Chapin and Xana Kernodle were believed to be at the Sigma Chi house on the University of Idaho campus at 735 Nez Perce Drive. Any interactions, contacts in direction and method of travel, or anything abnormal could add context to what occurred. So yes, they were there allegedly between 8 and 9 p.m. And then they arrived at the house maybe around 1:45, although there are some accounts that possibly he would have arrived, Ethan at least would have arrived after 2. So what happened in those several hours? And if when I discovered when I was doing an earlier presentation and I mapped it, it is so close. Sigma Chi is right on campus, and the campus is like steps away. It is so close, and it would have only taken a couple of minutes to walk home from the Sigma Chi house. So what happened over those several hours? Not that I want to put speculation in there, but because we don't have this information, it does lead you to believe that there could be some type of connection if we don't know exactly who the killer is. Although, of course, some of the information that's come out recently is that Kaylee's injuries were much more brutal than Maddie's, and considering they were in the same room, it might be suggested that Kaylee was the primary target. Now, what about the other 2 victims? What about Ethan and Xana? What happened with them? There's always speculation. We don't know yet until all the information is out. So, but yes, this is a big block in time gap, a huge gap in time when Ethan and Xana were at the Sigma Chi house. Alrighty, so moving along, detectives continue processing and working through more than 2,600 email tips, 2,700 phone tips, and 1,084 digital media submissions. We believe someone has information that will add context to the picture investigators are creating of what occurred that evening. Our focus is the investigation, not the activities. Your information, whether you believe it is significant or not, might be one of the puzzle pieces that help solve these murders. It just occurred to me, if the police have been able to get into Ethan and Xana's phones to see what they were doing, who they were texting, right? Because that would definitely give some context and some information as to what they were doing. Because it's really, really difficult for young people nowadays to not text for that long of a period of time. So somebody needs to know what they were doing between those hours. Now, this is really interesting. Using tips and leads, investigators have identified an incident involving Kaylee at a local business, which may have been the stalker reference she made to friends and family. In mid-October, two males were seen inside a local business. They parted ways, and one male appeared to follow Kaylee inside the business and as she exited to walk toward her car. The male turned away and it did not appear he made any contact with her. Detectives contacted both males and learned the two were attempting to meet women at the business. This was corroborated through additional investigation. Based on available information, detectives believe this was an isolated incident and not an ongoing pattern of stalking. No evidence suggests the two males were involved in the murders. I've heard somebody say that this was a grocery store, a local grocery store. So here it just says local business. So I don't know what is, if in fact, if it's a grocery store, but in any case, it was a local business. And so this alludes to potentially a stalker that she was referring to, or may have mentioned, or maybe even just used the word like, this guy's stalking me. We don't know yet, but, and it appears that police are saying that it was isolated and there's no ongoing pattern. And then it says investigators continue looking into information about Kaylee having a stalker. Information about a potential stalker or unusual occurrences should go through the tip line. All right, now what happened to Murphy? Where was Murphy? There have been numerous requests about the dog found at the residence on the morning of November 13th. Arriving officers entered the residence and found the deceased victims. During the search of the home, a dog was found in a room where the crimes had not been committed. Officers did not find any evidence on the dog, and there was no indication the animal had entered the crime scene. The dog was taken to animal services and released to a responsible person. That responsible person, it is believed to be Jack Decor, which is Kaylee's ex-boyfriend, who they apparently purchased the dog together, or he bought it for her, but they like co-owned, they co-parented the dog together. Now, the interesting thing about this is that there were some different reports that I had heard early on, like maybe the dog was outside, or maybe they found it later in the evening. So we're not entirely sure. Police is now saying that the dog was inside the room. So who put the dog in that room? You know, that brings up a lot more questions about the dog, because did the killer put the dog in the room so that he would, so that the dog wouldn't interfere with him? Did the killer know the dog and the dog would have no problem going inside the room? Brings up a lot more questions about who this, what happened with Murphy. Alrighty, and now it says again, at this time, no suspect has been identified and only vetted information that does not hinder the investigation will be released to the public. There is speculation without factual backing, stoking community fears, and spreading false information. We encourage referencing official releases for accurate information and updated progress. Okay, that's what I try to do in this channel. I know we do a little bit of speculation just because sometimes this information brings up so many more questions and then you just can't help having speculation, right? So the latest reports or the latest updates from Moscow Police Department, it says here, starting Wednesday morning, December 7th, and potentially into Thursday, Moscow Police Chief James Fry, along with members of the department, will collect and remove some of the victims' personal belongings from the residence, which are no longer needed for the investigation, so that they can be returned to the families. The items will be loaded into a truck and transferred to a secure location until the families can collect the belongings. These arrangements were made in coordination with the families. Anyone near the residence Wednesday morning is asked to keep roads clear. Movement of the items will be done as privately as possible in an effort to maintain respect for the victims and their families. Okay, so there was also a video that was put out, and let's watch that together.
Describe what is happening at the residence tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow, me and my command team and other individuals will be going in to box up personal belongings of the people that live there. And we're going to be getting those items back to the families. It's time for us to get those things back that really mean something to those families and hopefully to help with some of their healing.
Why do you personally want to be involved in collecting these possessions?
We have a lot of investigators investigating, and I'm not tied into the investigation side of it where I'm physically interviewing people, and it's important to me. It's important for us as a department to go in and take care of the families and get the items for them so that they can have some of those back and some of those memories back that are fond memories. And I'm a dad. I understand the the meaning behind some of those things. It may be something that we gave one of our children or something, and we're just trying to bring some of that healing.
as people learn about this stage of the investigation, what do you want to say about where you're at with the investigation?
We're at that point in the investigation where we're still gathering information. We're still gathering tips. We're still gathering evidence. We're still doing everything we need to do. But there also comes a point in time when the family needs to have those belongings back, the ones that we can get them back. They've asked for some of those things back. So we're ready to take care of that for them.
Okay. And let's continue. The house remains, anyone near the residence Wednesday morning is asked to keep roads clear. Movement of the items will be done as privately as possible in an effort to maintain respect for the victims and their families. We ask members of the media and community to be respectful of this process. The house remains an active crime scene and progress continues to be made in the investigation. And it just occurred to me, oh my gosh, it's been, what, almost a month since the killings occurred, and what happens with this house? It's like a ghost town, and just so interesting what's happening with this house. Have their surviving roommates gone in to get their things? And maybe nobody wants to go in there, right? So very interesting. I guess that's why everyone's going to be packing up. It sounds like all the personal belongings are going to get packed up and taken to another location so that the families can gather up those belongings. And it says here, video for public use, which we just saw. And so any information that you have can be submitted to the tip line at 208-883-7180. You can also email the tip line at ci.moscow.id.us. And digital media can be submitted to the FBI. So if you're in that area, if you happen to go by that area that weekend, if you saw anything that you feel, even if it's small, I know that digital media, a lot of that are tips from the general public, not just people who knew the victims or saw things. So people are discovering things along the way and submitting them to the FBI. So you may have the clue, like what happened in the Gabby Petito case, that the Batoon family happened to be driving by. They didn't even know them, but they happened to be driving by a couple weeks later and saw the footage that ended up being able to find or show where they were located and were able to help pinpoint where Gabby Petito's body was. So you never know. There could be some information that you have or that you see, and that helps to break this case. And once again, at this time, no suspect has been identified, and only vetted information that does not hinder the investigation will be released to the public. There is speculation without factual backing. Okay. And then lastly, I just wanted to go over here and check out the page that has been created. This is the homicide page, and actually what they've been doing is updating that information on here, which is really great. So you don't even have to go to the Facebook page. I just find the Facebook page is very organized as well. And so that all the information is here. I was just going to look through to see if there is anything else here. Rumor control. We've already looked at these so far. Let's see, what did they add to, did Kaylee have a stalker? Okay, they added the new incident information here. Is the public in danger? I believe I already read this, but I'll just reread this. Anytime there's a crime against a person, there is a potential danger to the general public. However, detectives believe these murders were targeted. As always, stay vigilant and look out for one another. We have clarified comments made by Latah County Prosecutor Thompson, who said the suspects specifically looked at this residence and that one or more of the occupants were undoubtedly targeted. We remain consistent in our belief that this was indeed a targeted attack, but have not concluded if the target was the residence or its occupants. Okay, and I think all of this has already been. Okay, so this is new. I mean, they've already said this, but it's good to reiterate just because I have it all in one place. Who is not believed to be involved? 2 surviving roommates, the male in the grub truck surveillance video, also known as White Hoodie Guy, also known as Jack S., the private party driver who took Kaylee and Madison home on November 13th, the male Kaylee and Madison called numerous times during the early morning hours of November 13th, any individual at the residence when 911 was called, the individual on the lease who moved out of the residence before the school year started and was not present at the time of the incident, the male or his friend who was thought to be a possible stalker and followed Kaylee into the parking lot of a local business in October of 2021. So that's good that they're at least putting this information in here. And, you know, I did watch a Spaces couple weeks ago with Jennifer Koffendorfer, who is a former FBI, and she said that if somebody's on this list, then they had a solid alibi that's been vetted. The police would have done their due diligence and they've got a solid reason that police believes that they're not involved. I still believe that just because they're on this list could mean that they didn't actually physically harm the 4 students. However, anything's possible. They could have been involved with somebody or corroborated with somebody or something, you know, because if it's been this a few weeks already and the killer has not been found, then they definitely either did a lot of pre-planning or covered their tracks or something. But for this amount of time to pass, nobody saw anything, no video, nobody heard anything, nobody knows anything. There are no suspects. They've already done forensics. There's been enough time for forensics to be done. And nobody has come out as a potential suspect in this. Then the person either was like a professional or there was a lot of planning that went into this. And so it's possible that this person didn't act alone. And so if that's the case, maybe one of these people on this list could have been a potential, you know, accessory to that. So I'm not saying that that's kid. That's completely speculative, but I don't feel like it should be off the table, right? I think that and even Kaylee's parents have said that they feel like, you know, they're glad that Jack DeCour, Kaylee's ex-boyfriend, is on this list. But you know what? If you really truly want justice, then nothing should be off the table. Anything should be possible because you just don't know. Like I said, it doesn't have to be somebody physically took the knife. There could have been somebody that was potentially an accessory to that. And you do see that sometimes in these cases, that there is somebody else that was involved or helping to plan. It's unfortunate, but it does happen. So I appreciate you sticking around. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think of this new information? Do you have a suspect? Do you have any ideas? Do you feel like there are any hot leads that we should be looking at? And if you enjoyed this video, I appreciate if you liked. And if you like my style of covering true crime, appreciate if you subscribe to my channel and hit the bell notification so that you're notified anytime I post a video or go live. And with that, stay safe, stay thriving, and have an empowered week, everyone. Mwah. Bye. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button for notifications. Thank you.